So cool. I am super excited. Today, we are going to go over Q&A. It's going to be an Ask Joe session, Ask Jen session. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. I'm feeling great. Thank you.
You have any questions about sellers finance?
Yep. Just type them in the comments and we'll get to them.
No.
And I know we got a boatload of questions already.
Do you
So
have any questions for them?
yep. Just type them in the comments if you got anything, Eder. We'll get to them for sure.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions I'm going to ask him. And then if it sparks more questions, type them in the comments and then we'll go back through and answer them. If I, for some reason, don't ask your question, just politely repeat it because we might get some chat going at the bottom, which is awesome. We encourage you to do that. Maybe be like a little star or you haven't answered this yet. So we're dedicating this whole hour to answering the questions that we get a lot. And the first question I think we're going to start off with that I think has been, for whatever reason, a really hot topic and a really important one too, is going to be talking about insurance. You want to start with that one?
Yes. So one common question I see that we get a lot, and I see it in a lot of groups, Pace Morby, Bigger Pockets, our own group, a lot of it is when I'm buying a property subject to, what's the right way to set up insurance? So you hear everybody coming up with their own theory, right? And then I've heard some people say that they're going to leave the existing insurance policy in place and they're going to add themselves to it as the new owner, or their LLC is additionally insured. And I've heard that before, and I think that's been taught around a little bit, but I've actually chatted with insurance experts, which I will definitely recommend our insurance guy to you guys because he is very well versed in how to do insurance policies the right way when you buy subject to. Because here's the thing, anybody bought subject to before, or the wrap mortgage? There's two things that are going to really make your world terrible when everybody's always worried about the one thing, the due on sale clause. So what triggers the due on sale clause the most is going to be if you don't make your payments on time, and if you don't have insurance set up the correct way. Those are going to be your number one and two biggest disasters for causing your world and your seller's world now a ton of problems. So we've chatted with our guy. His name is James Jenkins. I will drop his link for you guys in our group. We're actually going to have him on here to interview him here next couple weeks. He is licensed in 34 different states. We've used other agents, guys, and I'm not going to lie to you, long before we used him. And once we recently got some properties in areas where our old agents weren't going to, and we realized what we were missing out on, James is definitely the way to do it. So what we've done was we've convinced him to now get licensed in New York to be his 35th state, so he could take care of a lot of our other properties that we have there too. So out of over the 2,000 policies that he's ever insured, he says the way to set it up, and I completely agree, is that you're going to want to have I buy them in a trust. Okay. My beneficiary of my trust is my LLC. My LLC is going to have an insurance policy on that property. My insurance company, because why? I'm the owner of the property. I do not leave the existing policy in the seller's name and add myself as additionally beneficiary or as additionally insured. On my new LLC policy, I'm going to have my seller on my insurance as additionally insured. I'm going to have it with their new current address. So what I just say, I bought a property subject to it's deeded to a land trust. The beneficiary of that land trust is my LLC. My LLC has an insurance policy on that property, and the seller is on my insurance policy as additionally insured with having their new current address on there. So why do I not just leave their insurance policy in place and add myself to their policies additionally insured, like some other people teach and some other people do, which is totally fine. But the issue is with that is if there's ever a claim on the property and you're talking to somebody who's had one of our houses catch on fire and burn, I've had a claim. Okay. You have to get them to cooperate. You have to have the seller now. And if you've ever bought a property subject to, or you bought it on a wrap, you don't want to have to get a hold of that seller for anything. right? Better yet, now you have to get them to now cooperate through the whole process of submitting the claim. Why? Because the insurance is in their name. You're just additionally insured. You're on their insurance policy, right? I want to be in complete control over my situation. So where James and his team say to do is when you buy the property, seller policy stays for 10 business days after the new one is sent to the underlying mortgage. Once the old policy is replaced, the mortgage company doesn't care if the old one's canceled. Okay, so what is that? What I just say? I bought it, close on the property subject to, or bought it with a wrap or whatever, contract for deed, a contract for deed, they don't even see it. But if I'm buying on a wrap or subject to, I'm going to submit the new policy to the lender. Once they have that, 10 days later, I'm canceling the other one. And they won't care if it's canceled because they're going to have a new updated policy and everything's going to be fine. So I will say, keeping their other policy in place, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but I will promise you, if you've ever had to deal with an insurance company before on a claim, they are a pain in the ass and they don't want to pay. And it's a nightmare. So will that raise a flag to the lender? No. Not if you have them on there as additionally insured. Now, here's the trick to that. There's also a caveat. Payments are made on time. Insurance is set up the right way, like we've said. That seller's name is on the insurance policy as additionally insured. Now, there are some small instances where you could maybe deal with a small credit union or a small, tiny little hometown bank where it's the one branch and they might notice something, and it's all possible. James says that over the 2,000 ones they've insured, they've only had it happen twice, and those were both with the bank called Mr. Cooper. So just sharing what we've received. It's happened twice to our clients. Both times was with Mr. Cooper. That's out of about 2,000 sub-2 properties we've insured. I had this conversation with them just last week. So sharing with you guys why we've always got our new one policy and added our sellers to it for that reason. Now you could do it whatever you do. I'm not giving you financial legal advice. You always want to check with what's best for you, your attorneys, your insurance companies, but this is what we do and I'm sharing that with you. So that's a great question. And I hear it a lot, but once again, I don't want to have to call up Nancy that we bought her house 12 years ago. Say, hey, Nancy, your house that you sold is burned down. We submitted a claim and I need you to call your insurance company. And I'm going to walk you through how to make this real easy for both of us because it's not going to be, right? That's not a phone call I want to make. So cool. Great question.
Yeah, and when you work with the company that Joe's talking about, Ritzwell, they sent the most in-depth step-by-step protocol of exactly when to do things and how to do them. So we highly recommend them. So we can definitely drop their information and I can't wait to have him on. It was by far like the best conversations I've had. I even had my transaction coordinator and I jump on a call with them. So super helpful, but yeah, you want to make sure that it's after closing. You don't want the seller canceling anything prior to closing.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, we don't get a kickback. There's no referral. I don't get a discount on my policies. I'm just sharing with you the experiences that we've had, and hopefully you could have the same good ones for you guys too. And I will tell you, when we originally got the stuff to sign on one of our properties with him, Jen was all at first, she was like, I have to go online and put all the stuff. And she was all like twisted about it. And then like minutes later,
it was a different way of doing it. I wanted to talk to a person. I'm a little old school like that. Like, let me talk it through. But they're so well-versed in expertise in sub-2 that it was ridiculously like click, 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 easy. So try new things.
Yeah. And there we go. That's what I was just going to say. Thank you so much for finishing that.
There you go.
What you got?
All right. So yeah, that was definitely like the burning question I kept saying over and over again. So let's move along here. I think another one that was coming up a lot of times was kind of going back to the beginning of how do you even find a creative deal?
Okay, so creative deals, we have a little bit of a different process for us. Every time that we talk to a seller, I don't care if they want a cash offer, because they all do. Everybody wants a cash offer for their home, guys. I will just warn you. When our team, our students, whoever says, I talked to 10 sellers today, they all wanted cash for their house. I'm like, well, they weren't going to trade chickens, right? Of course they want cash for their house. Everybody does. So what we do though, 100% of the time, and with egg prices right now, who knows? Maybe people will want chickens, okay? Different story. But typical egg prices, they're going to want cash. So with that being the case, it's a numbers game. What we do is we ask everybody, if I were to get to that price, would you take terms? I might spruce it up a little bit more than that, especially what are we doing right now? And I'm going to be fully transparent in our business. We typically get, 15 to 20 something leads a day, incoming leads. We do a lot of marketing on Facebook. 6 months ago, I was telling this to Jen last night, 6 months ago, 10 months ago, a year ago, we were getting a lot of leads, off market properties galore. I would say probably close to 50% of our leads, if not, I'll check with Lexi in a minute. But I bet you half of our leads are on market properties right now. We're having a lot of people who have their houses on the market and they're not selling them, right? Everybody who thought they were sitting on gold, well, that's kind of starting to slip out from underneath them a little bit. So every single time I'm going to ask the seller, would you take terms? I've got some people who are very unrealistic on their pricing. I've got one right now, just popped in my head. They want $400,000 for it because that's what it was worth last spring, even though it's probably worth mid threes. They're still stuck on 400. So I said, well, if I could get to your $400,000 price, the only way I could stretch to get that number is if I'm able to buy it with seller financing. That means once we buy it for that, take over your old payments and we get into the rest of the process with them, right? I'm not going to give them a cash offer of 200 grand or 250 like I would like to, because I know that they're still, their number that they're hard on is for that 400,000. That's their number, is 400,000, right? So if I give them a 250 number like I want to, they're going to hang up on me. I can't do that. And these folks can't because they owe more than that, right? So how am I finding them? I'm just making that offer every single time. Jen asks me, how many offers do we make every day? She tracks my KPIs. Every day, I want to know how many offers you make. And I tell her every day, everybody gets an offer, right? If I'm paying your price, are you open to terms? If they say no, then I'm going to get into what a cash offer could potentially look like. If it's a turnkey house in a beautiful neighborhood and they owe top dollar for it, and I can't give them that low offer, there's no sense in me making you a low offer. It's going to be less than what you probably owe in the house. And if you're looking for top dollar on a beautiful house like yours, I can stretch and pay more than anybody else without any commission or fees. I pay all the closing costs. And the reason I can do that is with seller financing. Period. If that doesn't work for them, follow up. Because this market is changing people, right? And time and circumstances, we always talk about this before in the past, that time and circumstances will help change people's minds. Well, in an extremely strong bull market, like it was 6 months ago to the prior 2 years, extremely, that's hard to say. Hey, Joseph, hey, Joe, your house is worth 250 right now, but guess what? Wait 6 months, it's worth 350 in Florida. It's really hard to get you on that, but now it's happening opposite, right? So if that's the case, time and circumstances will change people. So stick to your numbers. I would say if anything, be a little on the conservative side now, especially if you're making a cash offer because the market is turning. So stick to your numbers. The house is not make it worth more just because they want more. Okay. We used to have this old saying in the car business. People would say, oh, I want what I owe on my trade-in, right? Well, if you owed nothing, you wouldn't take nothing. So what you owe is no bearing on what the value is. So how we find them, we ask everybody and a bunch say yes. So.
And just to
Great
piggyback
question.
on that, is there an extra little tip you could say? Because one of the questions was, how do you have a consistent lead flow then?
Okay, so consistent lead flow is a different story. We do Facebook marketing right now. I'm going on PropStream and I'm looking for folks who just bought their house 2 years ago who are currently have them listed for sale because generally they don't have a lot of room, right? They just bought it at the top of the market. And you'd be surprised right now how many folks I'm talking to, especially in this Florida market, who just bought a house. I ran into a guy yesterday. He's got a duplex in Miami, Florida. He's willing to sell in terms, but then when you iron out the terms, it's just not, the numbers don't make sense. Part of the reason why is the house was listed for $599 in April last year. He bought the place for $740. And then he put money into it. He painted, he made it look nice. So he bought it for $740. He's got it listed for $900. It's not selling with a realtor. He said, I'm getting offers in the 8s, but I got to pay a realtor $50,000 to sell it. He's like, I'd barely break even if that. So now he wants to sell it to us on terms. He's willing to sell it to us on terms, but he borrowed the cash from 2 other properties. So his break even's like $6,000 a month. Well, he's only collecting $5,800 a month in rent. And one side's not even rented yet. So that's going to be a challenge, right? That deal doesn't work. It says yes to terms and wants 900,000. I said, well, if the rest of the terms work out well, I could figure a way to pay 900,000 for it, but it'd have to be pretty good. And then we get into what it's really truly going on behind the curtain. No deal. So you're having people who want us to help clean up their mess. We have another lady who just spent 65,000 over asking, and now she wants to sell it for a $30,000 loss, and it's not even worth what it was originally listed for either. So market is changing. You can find leads on PropStream. You can find leads on Zillow. Right now it's easy. Put in seller financing, owner financing, TLC, rehab, cash, all of those keywords in the keyword section separately, not all together, jumped into one. And you're going to find somebody who has rehab, investor, all of these words I'll put in there, and I'll find one, say, hey, this is investor handyman special, right? And I'll find those things all over Zillow right now. And when people are hopping on them, what you need to do is figure out what the real number is and just submit a cash offer, a low enough cash offer. And it's a numbers game. And if you ask enough times, eventually you're going to get a yes, which hurts investors. And I'm going to share this too. I'll take another step. Investors think that you're going to strike gold on your 3rd hit. You might have to talk to 50 sellers. You might have to say here no 100 times. And if you suck in the beginning, which is good because you got to start somewhere, right? And we all suck in the beginning. In the very beginning, you might have to hear no 200 times. So part of what we talk about is mindset, right? And if you can't stand to hear the word no 200 times, and it's not even just 200 times, because every time you talk to a seller, you might need to ask them a couple times. I don't hear just one no and hang up the phone with you, believe me. You get me on the phone, I'm going to hear 5 or 6 no's before I know I really have nothing. So then times 100 people, I might have to hear the word no 600 or 700 times before I could just hear one yes. But then that could pay you a $50,000 assignment, right? So would I hear no 500 times just to hear a $50,000 assignment? I'm a guy. I'm used to hearing no. Okay, so it doesn't phase me. So mentality, mental strength. That's why I go by the Rhino. You know, they just charge forward through the forage. Nothing stops in Rhino, and that's the mentality you got to have. So today I went out to lunch. Today's my son's 8th birthday. Met with Jenn and the kiddos today. Had some great hibachi for lunch. But on the way back to the office, I always take a different way. I don't ever purposely drive for dollars, but I'm always driving for dollars, if that makes sense. And I found this neighborhood on the way back, took a screenshot with my phone of where I was in my GPS. And I'm going to start going through that neighborhood now and clocking some addresses. I'm going to look up some properties because this is in downtown Florida, some in the city part of it, where I know there's going to be some opportunities, and there are some crap holes, honey. So one was all boarded up. I'm like, oh yeah.
So like somebody says, you mean opportunities.
That's what I'm looking for. Those are my opportunities. And I know if she won't walk through the house, I know it's a really good house.
Struck gold.
Because I've took her to a lot.
Although
So,
with this creative business, we can definitely buy the beautiful houses too. And that's been a huge mindset shift too. Like, yes, the rundown junkers, you know, those are great, but also being able to help these sellers out to have beautiful homes and beautiful neighborhoods is just such a game changer too. All right, let me go into another question.
Yes.
All righty, we got a ton. This one came in, it's actually quite interesting, so I want to hear your response. So we fully disclose like on our marketing who we are. Other mentors such as Pace, really structure around corporate structure, not to associate himself with the business. What are your thoughts?
So I feel like your LLC and your company name, you don't want to have your name attached to it anywhere. Right, so my company name's not gonna be like Joe Delle Fave Enterprise. However, you're the face of it, right? When you're making these deals, these people are buying you. One of my favorite questions that I always get from sellers is, Joe, like you're gonna buy my property and it's subject to, how do I know you're gonna make the payments? What am I gonna tell them, right? I'm talking about selling myself, of who I am, how long I've been doing this for, how excellent my track record is, my references of sellers that I've already done business with. And then here's a list of the title companies that I do business with and attorneys that I do business with. Well, I'll highly recommend them, right? I talk about the process of how we structure the paperwork. So if there was ever a default, how we make it easier for them to get the property back. But in my 22 years of investing, even during COVID, in a global pandemic, even when some of our tenants didn't pay, we still made sure we paid. So even a global pandemic, we were 100% perfect on our side, and we didn't let that stop us. So, and we just sell ourselves. So here's why I think it's important to really sell yourself. And when you're branding you. You're getting people to like and trust you. And if you're going to be hiding behind the I buy houses corporate signs, you can still do fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think that you're going to have the like and trustability factor you'll miss out on. And I think that will cost you deals. So I like putting our faces out there. I'm proud of what we do. I've got nothing to hide. I don't want to keep all my properties like, here's all the houses and properties we own. So there's definitely ways to structure and protect your empire, which we dive into heavily often, to make sure that you are flying underneath the radar. But once again, when we're dealing with a seller, I want them to know that they should be happy to do business with us. And, we're proud people who do things right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great question.
Mhm. So this question is a basic one, but I think maybe it's really helpful. What is an assignment fee?
We get that a lot too, guys. So when you are signing a contract, so what happens is we write up a deal. It's either a cash deal or a creative finance deal. Now we're a lot different than wholesalers. On every one of these deals that we write up, we do have the capital and the ability to take it down. Sometimes I'm finding better deals that come across my desk that I want to allot some of that money to. So there are sometimes we're going to assign those to other investors. So if I have a cash deal and I have it under contract for $200,000, and I'm looking to get a $25,000 assignment fee. What that means is I'm not selling you that house for $225,000. That means I am selling you my contract to buy the house for $25,000, and that you then will take over the ability to buy that property for the $200,000 that I have it under contract for. So the assignment fee is a finder's fee, right? For me assigning you the contract. So a lot of times people will ask me, Joe, why is there this $20,000 fee for it? Well, obviously I've negotiated. I've spent a lot of money on marketing. I spent a lot of money on our team, all the overhead. We're spending probably $6,000, $7,000 every month on just our ads, guys. And it comes with a price, right? So we do have to recuperate marketing costs and things like that. So we attach an assignment fee to them. And that is just to help keep the lights on, keep the leads coming in, put a little tiny bit of Jing and Jen and I's pocket. We're not getting rich from assignment fees, but it does help, right? And so that's what we do. Some of those assignment fees are pretty awesome though, I will not lie. And some though, I'll be dead honest with you guys, there are some deals that we got that are a $5,000 assignment fee. So are those home runs? No, but it helps, run some ads and stuff like that. And I'd rather get something rather than nothing. Cash deal, assigned, terms deal, rent to own. So if we have a terms deal, we can assign those to other investors. Sometimes we assign them to a homeowner. There's a whole list of procedures when doing those two things. It's a lot different than assigning just a plain cash deal where somebody's in and out of the deal. When we are assigning a terms deal, it's a little bit more of a long, drawn out process. We got to verify a lot of crap, who they are, the buyer, and things like that. And it's a whole other conversation. So great question.
How do you determine what your assignment fee is?
That's going to be based on the deal and what the market brings. So what we do and what we've learned from our training, we spent some money on, is what we used to do is put 10K assignment. Now, what happens if your buddy John calls you and says, hey, 10K assignment, the numbers work, I'll take the house. Sounds good to me. But what happens when somebody else calls you and says, hey, I want the deal, and say, oh, I got it sold to John, he gave me a $10,000 assignment, and somebody says, I'll give you a $20,000 assignment. What do you do then? Do you piss off the first guy? Because I know if you told me $10,000, yeah, that's fine. You wrote you want $10,000. So what we do to clarify is we give somebody an offer sheet, submit your offer, here's the form, and we put that the assignment fee is starting at $10,000. I might get $8,000. I might get 15, but I let the market dictate, guys. And I put the reason starting at because I don't want to piss anybody off. If I put my assignment fee is 10 grand, that's the price, fine. If I pay the price, I got the house, am I right? But if it's starting at and I get a higher offer, I gotta be open, transparent, and truthful to everybody in the transaction. And I don't want anybody to feel slighted. I don't want to piss anybody off, but I also don't want to pass up 10 grand because I really like John, right? Because John's not going to pay my bills. So these are the things I look at in these situations. So excellent training that we spent the money for. And this is why I'm all a proponent of spending money on training, because it comes back to you. And what we spent on flying us to Columbus, Ohio, and going through Tiffany High training, even that just one tiny thing that didn't reinvent our business, but that one little thing has made us all of our money and then some back. Plus everything else we learned is a bonus, I always feel. So great question. Starting at, don't forget it. Did you hear that one, by the way? Luca, with our assignment fees? We'll go over that when I'm done. Okay, I didn't know if you heard me.
Day 2 for our new deck. Okay.
Cool.
Yes, go ahead and, if you're finding something that resonates with you, use it, try it out, make it your own. That's part of the beauty of having your own business. So we're happy to share what's working really well for us because we're constantly learning and, we're always coaches, but we're also coachable and teachable ourselves. So I think that's really important.
Yep.
Awesome. So let's see, go back to the.
Can I say something? Not for nothing. Shout out. We got like 40 something people up in this room on a Tuesday afternoon. I want to give you guys all a little bit of a golf clap. Okay. That's what we do here. The honorary golf clap. But I know you guys are out here. Yes, exactly. I like the money shave too. But you guys are putting in extra work here on a Tuesday and we appreciate you being here too. So I hope we're bringing the good stuff.
I hope so too. And I love that we're able to answer your questions that come in.
Yep.
So this question is, it sounds a little bit morbid, but it's honestly something that, we even wondered at one point. So if you are taking over a property subject to on a wrap or seller finance, what happens if the owner dies?
So obviously it's a tough experience, right? So maybe some flowers, but that's it. You still make the payments on time, right? You still make the insurance set up the right way. I will tell you, this is why I like to have the insurance under our name and our LLC rather than having it done the other way, because now what happens if that situation and there was a fire and you had to get the previous owner on board to submit a claim and they're no longer with us, right? So keep making the payments on time, making sure you have your insurance on paid on time. There's no reason to have to call the bank and let them know. And that's what you do.
Okay, thank you.
Easy, right? Make the payments, keep going.
Yep. I think sometimes we overthink, right? We get in our heads. So it's kind of,
I think when it was like a Ron LeGrand question when I was chatting before, he's like, you do nothing, you just make the payments. I'm like, all right, like keep going.
Yeah.
So that was a great question though, because that does come up often, especially when we're dealing with folks who maybe He's a little cranky, but he does it all with the best intentions. I love Ron. But and all,
30 times.
yeah, and think about it. The poor guy's been asked the same questions for 40 years. Like he's probably like, oh, this question for the 800th time. I could imagine, right? It's like when your kid asks you the same thing 100th time, and you're like, what?
Okay, I've seen this one come up a couple times today. So how do you buy and sell virtually without setting foot? Like, how do you set up contractors or, facilitate things if you're not on the premise?
Okay, so if I'm buying a property subject to or on a wrap, it's most likely a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood or a nice house in a nice neighborhood. It's pretty easy for me to get pictures. But guys, we buy them all virtually. I don't go to seller appointments. I don't go to the house. Send me some pictures of the house. And then at that point, I look at what do I have on the deal. Most of these deals I'm buying with no money down, I'm paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 in closing costs, which I know I'm going to get back from a tenant buyer anyways. So in these situations, even when they're in my own hometown, guys, I don't go to them. I will buy the property virtually with a lot of pictures, some videos. Can I have a contractor do a walkthrough for me? I sure can. Like we just put one under contract we're doing today in West Virginia. The first thing I ask the seller now that I'm putting it under contract is when I want to share this with my investor friends and some of their contractors, how do I get access to the house? Right? Can I send you a lockbox that we could put a key inside of it and put it on the front door because this house is vacant? I'm going to send people through it. This house is so crappy. If somebody were to steal something out of it, they'd be doing all of us a favor. So there's nothing to steal out of this place. But much other than that, if it's a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood, it's the same thing. Everybody always would get nervous. Joe, when you have this house and a lockbox and you buy the house on terms, like when we're showing a tenant buyers, are you afraid that they're going to steal something? And no, I'm not. What are they going to steal? The kitchen faucet. We've luckily, the worst that we had is we've had people like not lock up, but that's about it. So when I'm buying properties virtually, I usually have little to no money out of pocket on the couple $1,000s. And I don't have my credit tied into it. I don't worry about it. And I don't go to the properties. Pictures, videos will suffice. Even if it's one we're keeping in house for us, guys, all the properties that we're buying are one we just did in Niagara Falls. I'm not driving to Niagara Falls or flying into Niagara Falls to go look at this property. No shot. I bought it with $1,000 down. I think we paid $5,000 in closing costs. And I own a property for the next 30 years subject to. The guy just bought it. It was on the MLS 7-8 months ago when he bought it. So I saw the old pictures. I sent my contractor there because he had to do a couple small things, and that's really what it was. So with the phones now, these are the easiest things in the world to use as a tool. And even folks that are saying I'd never have a cell phone, well, they all got them now too. So they can send you some pictures. I can even share a fun story with you. You want to know what you can do? I'm gonna spend 2 minutes. You can send family to go take pictures of the houses, say an hour by. And then that family took pictures with their digital camera and then took videos with their phone and text them to you. But then when they took the pictures, they want to try their digital camera. So they put it on a zip drive and mailed it to us because they weren't very tech savvy. So even in a world, this is our family. So we love them. They're helping out. Wonderful, wonderful people. But they could have just took the pictures with their phone and text them, but they really want to try out the digital camera. So we had to wait for the zip drive to come in the mail. So even with that, it still works. So don't let your fears hold you back. If you find a great deal, all the houses we bought in Pennsylvania that we have, we've never been through any of them. We don't even drove through the towns before. So all I know is we bought them with 0 down and the people pay well. Don't slip on Pennsylvania, guys, by the way, if you're looking for good subject to deals. Properties are not expensive, they cash flow, and people in Pennsylvania pay well too, just like Ohio. So, great question.
All righty. So the next one, this is kind of just kind of breaking down some of my favorite back in the day. I would get so confused with all of these different words, all the terms, right? So what is the difference between land contract, contract for deed, or like sub to or wrap mortgage? There's all these fancy terms. Can you kind of break it down peanut butter and jelly style?
Yeah, so when you're buying a property with a wrap or you buy it at sub 2, you're buying with creative financing. Okay, and the thing with when you buy it that way, your deed does get transferred to your LLC, to your name, or to your land trust. I buy them in a land trust, and that's how I have my deed put in there. But some people are very worried about the deed, rather it's getting transferred to you and that now you have ownership of the property, or maybe they're worried about the due on sale clause, right? And they're worried about that triggered. So it depends on what state you call it. You know, in New York, I think they call it a land contract. Some places they call it contract for deed. There's a lot of other names to call it. But all that means is that once we buy the property, we go to closing, the deed's going to sit in an escrow. The deed doesn't get transferred into my name yet. So the deed's still technically in the seller's name. So that's not going to trigger your due on sale clause. So when you're talking with the seller, a lot of times, what we do is I can offer just that. I don't want to do that. My lender has a due on sale clause. Well, if that deed transfers, then that could trigger that. It's very unlikely, but if it ever does, I could understand your concerns. And if I were to buy it with a contract for deed, that means I still buy the property from you at the price we talked about, the same terms. The only thing is the deed doesn't transfer it over until I have you cash out in full. So contract for deed, I like to control the deed. Once again, I don't want to have to get my seller back down the line for anything else. So I would like to control the deed. That's why I prefer to buy it with a wrap. But I would not rule out not doing the deal or having that solution is another way to make a deal with somebody who has that concern and you just can't get over that hump, right? You know, they want to sell, they got high motivation or some type of pain, but they have concern about, they don't trust you, they don't trust the process, or they're just scared, right? Maybe a neighbor told them something or the mailman said something. So this is another way to get around that, to make them feel comfortable with the transaction. So it's knowing how to make the offers. No different than yesterday in Pensacola, Florida. We've been chatting with the gentleman for months now. He's in the military. They restationed him. He just bought the house. We talked about terms. He says, can't do terms. Said I'd be open to terms, but I can't really do. I'm looking for a cash offer. He puts the house on the market. I see it was on the market, doesn't sell. I pull it up on Zillow yesterday because I'm a follow-up madman. Now he's got it listed for rent. So of course I call him up. I said, Bob, why don't you just sell me the house on terms? You're already gone. Now you're gonna be a landlord, an accidental landlord. And I said, that's what happened to Jen when we met. She had her own house. I had my own house. And then when I bought my house and we got together, she moved into my house. Now we're renting her house out. And when she bought her house, she wasn't planning on being a landlord, but yet now here she is taking the calls with a leaky faucet or any of these other things. Is that what you intended to do? No, it wasn't. So he explains to me the situation, guys. So why we call it the Creative Finance Playbook, why I wear my shirts for you guys every single Tuesday. Why we call it the Creative Finance Playbook is because you got to have a different play, right? You go to the line of scrimmage, quarterback observes what the defense is giving them. And sometimes you got to make an audible. You got to make a switch because you're reading the defense, you see what they're giving you, and you've got to do something different, right? So what I did in this situation, I explained to him, why don't you just sell it to me on seller financing? He says, well, I got offered seller financing already, and I can't do it. The reason why is because his ex-girlfriend, his ex-mother-in-law, gave them the money for this property under a note at 1.9% interest. And he says that the deed transfers over. She said she's going to call the loan due. And he says she would let somebody assume it at 4.5%. I said, well, I don't want to have to go through assumption paperwork and get my credit check. That's not how I do it. I'm an 800 credit score. There's no reason to do that. And at 4.5%, it doesn't pencil out for a rental. If I could get it at 1.9 at your current payments, I can make this thing work for a rental. And that's what I would do. So I said, well, then why don't we do this? You're going to be leasing this place. Why don't you lease it to me with the option to buy it? I'll cover the closing costs, but you're going to put in a renter. You're going to be moving. Then this person rents it, and who knows, they're not going to keep it as nice as you. You don't have any light at the end of your tunnel. This is going to be a rental for who knows how long. The difference is if you rent it to me, we're going to have the option to buy it for whatever price we determine. I'm taking care of the maintenance calls. I'm taking care of all of the things, not you. So you're free to go because my lease is a little bit different. But my lease also says I'm going to re-rent it to somebody else, and I'm going to resell it to them for a little bit more of a higher price. And my goal is to get them to buy that down the road. So I'm going to provide you a light at the end of the road, at the end of the tunnel. And you're not going to get the maintenance calls in the meantime. And he says, that sounds like a great idea. Let me sleep on this tonight. Me and you need to talk about this tomorrow, because he was literally getting into base. So this is the situation where what do? I called an audible. The deed couldn't transfer over because of ex-mother-in-law, but I still want that low payment. Right? So how am I going to buy that? I'm going to buy on a lease purchase. And when I buy on a lease purchase, guys, what do I put down? 0. How much do I have in closing costs? 0. I'm controlling real estate with a piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper, maybe 3. And I control this real estate now. Now I'm going to put in a tenant buyer who's going to give me on a $300,000 home, $20,000 to $30,000 down. I'm going to get about a $500 spread on the rent every single month. And I'm going to get them cashed out. Rather, they need help with their credit. Maybe they just relocating because of the military. Pensacola is a huge military base. So there are people moving and going all the time there. Guys. So once again, this is a great opportunity for somebody. This is a brick ranch, 2,000 square foot brick ranch with brand new solar panels on it. A heck of a deal. It really, really is. And his PITI on this house, I think it's like $1,600 a month. It's low. And the house is nuts inside. Like whoever redid it did a great job. Like if this was like next to where we lived and it had a pool, I'd be showing this Jen. She'd say the island isn't big enough. I don't blame her. I like having a big island too. It's a little tiny island, but it's done. Yeah, but they did a really great job though. They did. It's kick ass. So once again, how am I able to make that offer still work without triggering the due on sale clause with mother-in-law, without her knowing now that he sold this property to somebody else or all the other hooky doogie? Creative Finance Playbook is that reason, guys. So, and if you aren't subscribed to our YouTube channel, Creative Finance Playbook, go check that out. So make sure you subscribe to there because we do put a lot of extra stuff on there. So Creative Finance Playbook, YouTube, subscribe. We put some extra dope stuff out there. You guys are not going to miss.
Super grateful for all the subscribers. We're growing on that channel. We're thankful for you guys to be a part of the group. Everything. We also have our newsletter that'll go out with a reminder every Tuesday on our website. So if you want to check that out. And yeah, we're rocking with our new launch here on our 3-month program. So always more if you want more. Just let us know how we can help you. All right, next question. This is a great one. Can you please discuss the benefits of buying in a land trust?
First of all, you do it for privacy, right? I don't want to have my name anywhere. If you talk to any really, really wealthy people, you don't want your name showing anywhere. The less I could show up on any type of county documents is better. Properties that you own, the better. So there's a list of reasons why I love a land trust. But one, I love the fact it gives me privacy, right? When we deed a land trust, it doesn't say the land trust name is Joe or Jen. It's usually just the property address. So if I have a house on 123 Apple Street in Smithtown, Virginia, then it's going to be 123 Apple Street, Smithtown, Virginia, land trust. That's the name. So I love the privacy of it. I also love the flexibility to it too, because for the same fact goes, if you have to change a beneficiary, so the beneficiary of a land trust is really who's benefiting from it, right? Who's the kind of the owner of it. Those are easy to change. Trustees are easy to change. Also too, if we have for an example, if I have a lender who sees that I bought a property in a land trust, they're not saying it's less likely to call the loan due, but there is the Act of 1982 deed of Saint Germain, which says that if a family deeds a property into a trust for estate planning purposes, a lender cannot call the loan due. Although they can look at who the beneficiary owner of that trust is, and if it's not that person's name, and it's your LLC, could they still call the loan due? Sure can. But let's just say hypothetically that happens, right? The bank pulls it up and says, hey, Joe, hey, Jen, we pulled up the paperwork and it shows that this property is deeded to this land trust, we need to see the beneficiary paperwork or the deed or the trust papers. Say they need to see that. It's not recorded with the county, so they don't see it anywhere. But say they request it for some reason. I could add or subtract any names or anything I want there fairly easily. Okay, so I love the flexibility of a land trust. I love the fact it gives me my privacy. I love the fact that I'm able to direct the proceeds of that to any LLC that I want to. And it still remains out of my name. When you talk to Ron LeGrand, he is probably the legend on how to set these up the right way. And this is why I've learned from him for 20 years how to do this. This is why I do it the way we do. And when you have people who are ultra successful say this is the way to do it, and they tell you the reasons why, not just to do it this way, you find out all the reasons why, he is speaking the truth. And this is why we do it the same exact way. So I love the privacy, most important. Great question. And you
Very
should always be deeding them to a trust too. Don't deed them to your LLC. Because when you're looking at a lender and a lender sees that this new sub 2 buyer is an LLC, that could cause an issue, right? So when it sees it's deeded to a land trust and it's the trust name, they usually just back off of it. And if you really wanted to get stabby, you could put the trust name under the previous owner's name. So if Mary Smith was the owner, I could put Mary Smith Land Trust. Doesn't mean she's the beneficiary or the trustee. That's just the name of the trust. You can name it whatever you want. And all it is a handful of papers, not some big, long, drawn out thing that's very expensive. I've had people say, my attorney says it costs $5,000 to make a trust, guys, then get another attorney. It should cost a couple $100. It's a handful of pieces of paper. It is not overly complicated. If it's cost you more than like $200-300, find another attorney.
I have a couple more regarding that kind of topic here. So this one is, does deeding a property from an LLC to a land trust trigger transfer tax?
Could. It depends on where you are and what states you're in. It could. We have before, and it hasn't in New York. But it definitely could. Depends, right? You're changing ownership of the property. You might want to show that it went from one of your LLCs to a trust, and maybe they don't charge you. That all depends. You want to check with your local officials. Check with your attorney as well, who's going to be documenting or doing the process for you. So some of these questions are very localized, right? So that is a great one. There's some that are just overall generalized. That's wherever you're doing that deal, you want to check with whoever you're working with in your area, because everyone might be slightly different. I don't want to say yes or no, and then you go, they're like, he lied, he was way right. So.
Yep, and that's the next one I was gonna ask now is, can you finance a property in a land trust?
Okay, so the most of the answer you're going to hear is going to be no. So I'm going to say no, but I'm going to put an asterisk next to that and say it's also possible. And the reason why is we have had that done before. So back when Joe and Jen were being naughty and we were burring, I'd buy a property with cash. I would deed it to my land trust with my LLC beneficiary. I'd rehab it. I would rent it. And then probably me putting a tenant buyer. But then what I would do was I'd go back to my lender and say, hey, I need to refinance to get my cash out. And first of all, they make it a nightmare for you, my wife, importantly, because they're going to want all the paperwork. But here's the best bet. If you're going to do that, it's not going to be with a Wells Fargo. It's not going to be with a Chase Bank. What we did was we had a relationship with a small town local bank. If you're in upstate New York, we use Canandaigua National Bank. And in the 100+ years of them being in business, they said they've never done that before. But we've shown them that yes, and their qualm will be with you, is that they're lending money to a trust, or I'm sorry, they're lending money to your LLC for a property it technically doesn't own because the trust owns it. And that's their qualm. However, once you show the beneficiary paperwork and it was bought this way, and it's a small local bank or local credit union, somebody you could actually talk to, a human that you probably have a relationship with, it's not impossible. Or what you want to do if you don't want to go through all the BS is you deed it to your land trust or to an LLC, you take out the money and then you quick claim it to a land trust after. You can do that. And I've even told the bank that I've done that too, because I've done it both ways. I'm like, you shouldn't do that. I'm like, I know, but I did. And I'm still making my payments on time, so don't bug me. And they don't. That's the benefit of having these small local relationships versus dealing with a national lender. So I was in the car business for 20 years. I was head of finance, largest Chevy dealer in the country. I've dealt with all the Bank of America's, Wells Fargo's, smallest banks. And I will say for sure, if you're going to be borrowing anything ever, I'm always a huge fan of finding local small town banks or credit unions, not these big national lenders. They'll be more flexible, can be more willing to work with you, and they're local people owned and ran usually. So you'll have better luck there, is what I found. So if you're in Rochester or upstate New York, 5-Star Bank, Canandaigua National Bank, even ESL was pretty solid. Those are all good lenders to use. There were not huge national banks. Even, oh geez, what's that other Family First Credit Union was kind of decent. A little bit of pain to deal with. There's another one in Rochester, I forgot. I'll think of it. Thompson or Tompkins was another good lender in New York. So finding those small connections are key, guys. And I will tell you another one, ESL in upstate New York. I've had one of my friends who was going to pay cash for a property and walked in and he took out a personal loan, no closing costs, for $50,000 and bought a property for $50,000 cash. Bought it, rehabbed it, and then they let you refi into one of their other products right after. So it's knowing these small little credit unions and banks and their things that they'll let you do that these big national banks will never let you do. That's the key. If you're going to use your own credit, which I highly recommend you don't ever do any of that stuff because it's not needed.
I was like, well, you're going down a rabbit hole there, but we don't have to do that anymore.
But if you do, there's a will, there's a way. I know. And I
Yep.
don't want to, and I'm never going to tell you to do it. But if you're going to, this is the smartest, best way to do it if you're gonna.
Yeah. So when do you
Ron-
put the property?
Ron would be so pissed at me right now for talking like
He
this.
would definitely be yelling at you for sure. I'm gonna have to tell him next week.
I know. That's gonna be
Okay.
funny.
When do you put the property in the land trust? Is it before you close, after you close, or when you close?
We do it. Great question. We do it right at closing. So it's part of the closing docs. It's going to be right in there. It's just another handful of forms that are going to be in the, 50 that you're going to sign, or however you're going to sign that day. And one of them just going to be that. It's going to be your closing docs, your HUD statements, your new note, all the other things. And then it's also going to be in there your trust agreement, which is going to show your beneficiary and it's going to show your trustee.
Okay, I'm gonna scrolling through here. So if you're still on and you asked a question we haven't gotten to, be sure to drop it again.
I think you're doing a great job, babe.
Thanks.
And you know what? I don't ever pre-look at any of these questions because I don't want to have to pre-think about it. I just want to be able to tell you what it is. So if you got more, keep going.
Okay. Oh, do we buy mobile homes? What's our take on those?
So I'm talking with a lady right now in Oregon. She's got a mobile home. So there's two situations where I'll buy mobile homes. If it's a mobile home and they want terms, I have to own the land too. So the lady that we're working on right now, she owns the land, but this is going to be a cash offer because the people who moved out left this place trash. If it is a mobile home in a park where there are rules and things like that, I typically tend to stay away from them. However, I've known other people who've had great success. One of my friends in upstate New York is a realtor. He says a gentleman comes in his office and says, I need cash and I'll sell you my mobile home. And they're like, we'll give you $10,000 for it. He said, $10,000 is what I need. If you give me 10 grand, you could have the thing. He's like, I bought it for 10,000 cash. It was in a mobile home community. The minute I bought it, I just listed it for 30 grand and sold it. I just cleaned it up and painted like one of the rooms. we've bought properties ourselves sub to. There was a mobile home and it was owned on its own land. This was in Louisiana. But all I did was I bought it. They needed $7,000 to walk away. So I gave them $7,000 to walk away. We had it under contract for 70. But before I even closed on it, I found a cash buyer for 90. So the minute I closed on that deal and gave them their $7,000 and paid 2 for closing, I already had my cash buyer lined up for 90. He gave me $90,000. We ended up netting, I think, like 17, 16, 8 or something like that. And we just paid off their mortgage. And so instead of keeping that deal sub 2 for the next 20 something years we had planned with them, we had that thing cashed off and paid off in just 2 months, if it was even that long, because they were pestering me to buy the deal. The minute we closed on, like, we want it. So I buy them both ways. But if I'm going to buy in a park where I have to lease the land, I want to get in and out of that deal. So I'm looking, the only way I'm gonna do that, if I'm buy it cheap and then turn around and resell it quickly. I'm not going to turn that into a rental. If I own the land, then I could do both. Great question. But
Okay,
also
well-
too, the one that we got today, the mobile home is so trashed. I'm figuring out what the land's worth. Because honestly, they should just rip the mobile home. The way these people who are squatters in this place left the thing so terrible, it'd be doing everybody a service just to get that old mobile home dragged off the 5 acres in Oregon and put a new one back in there. So we're working on what a cash offer would be for the land.
What kind of financing can an end buyer get to purchase a mobile home?
It depends on the year of it. It have to be a certain year or newer. I think it's got to be, and I don't remember the particulars of it's got to be something that's like 80 something or newer. It's got to be somewhat newer. If you're trying to get somebody financing a really old mobile home, you're better to sell it to them on seller financing, where you don't have to get the bank involved. If you're trying to get them cashed out, it's got to be a newer mobile home. Every lender might be a little different. So check with a lender in your area who you might be using or who you might recommend your buyer use, and then find out what their requirements are. Find out in your area who are the lenders that lend on mobile homes, and then find out what their requirements are for their lending. And that's what you're going to base yours on. So for an example, if they say we don't lend on anything that's a 75 or older, and if I find one that's built in 69, it's in decent shape, I know that nobody else could get finance on that thing either. So I'm going to pitch that to my seller that, hey, listen, because of the age of your mobile home, even on the land, nobody will get finance for that. So let's structure the deal with seller financing. And then I turn around and wrap that to another end buyer for a higher price, make a little bit on their rate, and sell it that way. That's what I would do. I'd be the bank.
Great. All right, another land trust question. What is the responsibility of the trustee if someone's trying to explain the tax ramifications for a trustee to her sister, for example?
So you're going to have a trustee, it's going to be somebody who could just sign for it. Right? So there aren't going to be tax ramifications unless you're paying them to be your trustee. Because and think of it this way, you ever hear of a trust fund baby? The trust fund baby is the beneficiary of that trust. They're the one benefiting from the trust. But mom and dad don't trust that child to have all that money at once. So they have a trustee, somebody they authorize is able to sign for the checks, for the withdrawals to give that person, right? So they're just the signer for it. Now, the one thing that I love to do, me personally, is you could have a trustee be another person. You could be, and there's a long list of people who could qualify. I honestly like to have one of my LLCs be the trustee as well. So one of my LLCs will be the beneficiary of the land trust. And I have a separate LLC that I have set up is just my trustee LLC. And that LLC is gonna be my trustee because now I could sign and control the pen. I don't have to call up my friend Bob and like, hey Bob, I'm buying another house. I need you to sign some papers because you're my trustee. I don't have to even worry about that because my LLC is a trustee. I get sign everything that way too. So you can control the pen that way. And that's why I prefer to have my trustee be one of my other LLCs. I'm having fun today.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Yeah, if you-
Favorite lawyer in Rochester? Sorry, he's in Buffalo. So sorry. Favorite, I will tell you, Rick Borman's office in Buffalo, New York is fantastic to work with. These guys know their stuff. They can do deals in anywhere in the whole state of New York. And they've been a great to work with. So speaking of, I got to find out what's going on with their deal with their Green Road, but
yes, I would love that one to close. That would be a great birthday present for our son. But yeah, if I was gonna say here, I see that someone was interested in a deal. If you're not a part of our Facebook group, make sure you're there. We always try to drop it there first, favehomebuyers.com. We'll be posting all of our deals there as well. And also just shoot us a message. Like Joe said, we have our new dispo manager in training, Luca. So he will definitely be collecting tons of information, and we're gonna showcase him once he gets his feet on the ground a little bit better here, because we just threw him in yesterday. So he's rocking. Okay, this is to making offers. If you want to make a cash lower offer and a terms offer, but you don't have a ton of liquidity, sorry, would you plan to assign if the cash offer was accepted and then maybe look for a tenant buyer if you got on terms? So I think basically the question is, if you don't have that money to pay the cat, are you understanding the question?
I do.
It's my question. If I could,
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
Okay, so like we're trying to make two offers sometimes, right? Like, hey, I'll buy your house and I'll give you full price if I can have the terms, or I'll give you cash, but I might need less, right? So I might have to give you less, right? And that's kind of like the idea, like either or. So if you're doing that, but you don't have a ton of liquidity, would the strategy then be like, if they'd rather go with the cash offer, then you're probably gonna have to plan on assigning that. Whereas if you get the deal on terms, then maybe you can do the normal thing and kind of look for a tenant buyer or rent to own or whatever.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I'm submitting an offer to a seller, I tell them very honestly that when I'm getting when I pay cash for a property, it's because why? I'm getting a house that I'm getting a really big discount on. Generally, they need some work. And when I get the house under contract the right way, whether I have the money for that deal set aside or not, I know that the numbers that I set up, I could always assign that to somebody else. Right. And I can make a small assignment fee on that. Small could be relative, could be 10, it could be $50,000. Could be $100,000, depending on what you're looking at, right? But I know that the way I have that deal structured, if it's a really, really good deal, I'm gonna be able to find a buyer for that, whether it's me or somebody else. I also put in a 21-day due diligence period, or 30-day due diligence period means that I've got 30 days to find my end buyer, to show this to my investor friends and my contractor friends, to make sure that the numbers that I'm seeing are all adding up. And for any reason it doesn't, I'm going to take my $100 deposit back, and no harm, no foul, right? So I do give myself that window. And then if I do agree to terms, I'm going to go to creativefinanceplaybook.com. I'm going to download the cost of entry worksheet. I'm going to fill that bad boy out, because I'm showing with Lexi. She's on our team a lot lately. Is when she says, a seller says, hey, Joe, I'll do that deal with $5,000 down. Once you add in the $5,000 down, closing cost, 3 months of payments, insurance policy, it's $18,000, right? It could be expensive. So what happens if I don't have the $18,000? A couple of things I would do is I would either partner with somebody like us who does, and we partner on the deal together. Or if it's just, I'm trying to build up some capital, I might look to assign that to another investor, or even a homeowner who wants that deal, will pay me a healthy assignment fee for that. Now I've got some capital set aside. So for an example, if I find a house in upstate New York and it's a $150,000 house, and I'll give you an example. One of our students recently, we figured the ARV is 175-ish to 200 conservatively. And she got 205 for it. She got under contract for $92,000. She could have assigned that and just had under contract. But I said, your best bet is to put it on the MLS, because that's where our best bet is to find our buyers. So either get hard money, or you and I could partner together on the deal. And I'd come up with the money, and we'd be partners on it. She found her own hard money, but it's the same young lady who legitly sold it for 205 cash. So it ended up working out really well for her. She's gonna net probably $90,000 by the time she pays realtor commission and things like that. So I'm a big fan of partnering with people who are already doing business in the area, who you like and trust, who are doing good stuff. And if you don't have the money for the deal, find somebody who does, if it's that good of a deal. So if it's a cash offer, like what you're saying, every one of our deals that we're making because we get 15, 20 leads a day. Everyone is, hey, I could give you a cash offer, but it's gonna be low, or I get stretched to almost a full price offer. But the way I could do that is with monthly payments and buying on terms. And I kind of weigh out
So you
either
don't-
one.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. So you're not actually making two offers. You're more kind of saying, I could make you this offer, but it's going to be a lower. If you want your full price, let's talk terms, because really you're trying to go for terms. Or do you give them that option and say, would you like a cash offer for lower, or would you like your price, but I'm going to have to get the term?
I'll tell them I could pay your price for terms first. And if they say no, I prefer cash. Okay, good. We're going to go down that cash. But if I do, it's because I'm getting a big discount. So I'm setting the precedence from the very beginning that I'm not paying your $400,000 price for your $375,000 home that you want 400 grand for. If I'm going to be submitting you a cash offer, it's going to be for much less. And the reason why is because I usually get a big discount. That's when I pay cash for a property. So I'm setting them up already knowing that ahead of time. And some folks will say yes. This is where I got to tell you guys, still submit your cash offer, because you'd be surprised how many times people will say, you know what, fine, let's go ahead and do it. And here's what they're going to have is some pain, some motivation, something going on. The people who are like, I just want to sell it for the sake of selling it, or I want to downsize, they're in no hurry, they're in no pain. They're not really interested in your low offer, right? So we're finding this often here in Florida, where people want some crazy prices for their houses. And they want all cash, and they want cash now. My thing is, what I do when I run them through our script, I also find out what they owe on the property. So if you want 375 or 400 grand for it and you owe 320, I can't give you a cash offer, because my cash offer is going to be under what you owe. So knowing what they owe is extremely important. This is why our script that we have is really awesome, because it asks them some of these questions. You can too. You don't need a script to ask them, what do you owe on the property? But I will tell you, if you just ask them it out of the blue, they're going to tell you to piss off most of the time. So we have a way to do it that usually we get the responses we need to get the information that we need with the right rebuttals that we need to make these observations. Because if I have somebody who's got a free and clear house, I was working with Lexi today. She says that we have somebody, she wants 300 grand for her property. We're going to offer her 150, the trailer lady. Okay, we're going to offer her 150, and we're going to explain to her why we can pay 150. We're going to come up with the facts of why it's worth that. I'm not just pulling a number out of my rear end. It's worth that, right? But how do we get there is where I'm explaining to her. And Lexi says to me, well, what happens if she says I can't take it? I'm like, well, she can take it because she doesn't owe anything on the house. So she can, right? Now, if she owes 250 on the house and I'm going to make a cash offer at 150, then that's probably a much truer statement. She can't take that. Why? Because she owes 250 on the house. So knowing that what they owe is extremely important. Always get that.
Couple more questions. If you have any more, feel free to drop them in the chat. These are kind of going to go towards rent to own. One was going back to a sandwich lease purchase. Can we collect a non-refundable option deposit when we do a sandwich lease?
Yeah, absolutely. This is why these are one of the best ways to get started if you're just getting started and you don't have a ton of capital. A sandwich lease purchase is one of the easiest ways to do it, guys. You might find somebody who wants to sell their house and you don't want to come up with that thousands of dollars of closing costs. Maybe they have a lien against their house and you don't want to have to come up to closing and pay off that lien that the town charged against them for $15,000 for whatever, right? Or whatever there can be. So buying a property with a lease purchase and then reselling that with a sandwich lease purchase is one of the best ways to generate revenue. Why? Because the minute I have that under contract on the lease purchase, I got no money down. I'm usually getting no payments for 90 days. I don't even need to set up an insurance policy on the house because I'm not even the owner of it. Now, what I'm going to do is install a tenant buyer who's going to give me a non-refundable option deposit. It could be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and up. One of our students just got a $30,000 non-refundable option deposit for one of his properties just last week. Right. So if you got a $30,000 non-refundable option deposit, that's yours. You're going to get taxed on it. It's yours to keep. It's income. All right. And then the monthly cash flow is also yours. So then if you were to buy that house and then flip it to a sub 2 because you didn't have the thousands to close on it. Well, guys, now you do. You just got that from your tenant buyer. And now the $20,000 they gave you could be the working capital you needed to cover the closing costs from your seller, and then you buy it sub two that way too. So I love sandwich lease purchases. The only thing I don't love about them is I'm not controlling the deed. It's not my property technically, but I'm still a middleman making a ton of money on it. So you don't always have to own it to make money. And if you're just starting off, or if you don't have a ton of capital, that's a great way to offer that. You don't have to worry about doing sale clauses. You don't have to worry about closing costs. You don't have to worry about insurance policy. So when you're figuring out your cost of acquisition, it goes way, way, way down with doing a lease purchase as a buy. Sandwich lease purchase, you need to make sure you have the right agreements, because our agreements say that we have the ability to resell it for more and re-rent it for more. Right. And our agreement says with our seller that we're responsible for the maintenance, the repairs, which is a big thing, because if I'm a landlord and the toilet gets plugged, they get the phone call, the landlord does. So our agreement lets them know is they're technically the landlord, but they're off the hook of all those responsibilities. They're all on us. The house burns down, it's their insurance though, because they're still the owner. They have to keep their insurance in place. Great question.
When do we get the attorneys involved with rent to own?
So when we put in a tenant buyer, we don't even meet them. Part of our virtual business that we always talk about, I don't meet these people. Once we talk to them, they go to the house, they've seen the house, they've got the money, they've verified it. We're setting up, they've gone through screenthetenant.com, and Paul and his team give us back the thumbs up approval, like, hey, these people are good to go. We then do not go sit at the kitchen countertop and sign a paperwork with them. We send them to the attorney's office. The attorney's going to fill out all the lease agreement, and they're going to sign it right there with the attorney. They're going to give the attorney the paperwork, and they pay for that. So our attorney in upstate New York, I think, charges like $400 to go do that. And he doesn't charge us, he charges our tenant buyer. So when I'm talking to a tenant buyer, I say, make sure you bring in first month's rent, make sure you bring in your $20,000 non-refundable option deposit, and make sure you bring in your $400 for your closing costs. You'll be meeting at the attorney's office 2 o'clock on Thursday. And by 2:25, you'll be peeling out of there, going to your new house. The keys are still in the lockbox. Help yourselves. You can move in that day. That's exactly what I say word for word.
Just like that.
Pretty much.
What are some of your internal safeguards against predatory lending?
Very good. So if we are going to put in a tenant buyer, what we do is we check with screenthetenant.com. The reason why I love these guys is because they make sure they check the back end and front end to make sure that these folks actually qualify. So part of what their process is, yeah, we look at credit. I'm not worried about your score. I pulled tens of thousands of credit reports. I've seen people who have 500 credit score that are solid people. And I've seen some people who are 700 credit scores who are complete turds. And I know how to spot the difference. Good thing is you don't have to be that good. You have these applicants submit their application to screenthetenant.com. Paul and his team gives you back a 70-page report on criminal, sex offender, verifies income, all the things. But what they do is they're also going to check the numbers on the deal. You're selling them a house for $200,000. They have $20,000 down. They're going to need a loan for $180,000. He pencils it in and what rates are, looks at their income to make sure all of those numbers add up. And so, and I'll be dead honest with you, we've had a case before where we had a young guy, really nice guy. He ended up kind of working for us by sending us FSBO signs all over the place. What happened was he got into a car accident. He got a settlement. And this is a true story. This is why I'll never forget it. He says, I got your 25 grand down. I want the house. It was a $200,000 house. The rent was like $1,800, $1,700 a month, and he makes $25,000 a year. I love his down payment. I was like, bud, here's the problem. I can't give you the house. The reason why is I'll take your 25 grand. I love your down payment, but at your $25,000 a year, you're not going to pencil out for the rent. You're going to become late. And what's going to happen is eventually I'm going to have to evict you. I'm going to take the house back and you're going to lose your 25 grand. And I like you. And I want to sell you a house, but I just don't feel comfortable taking your 25 grand knowing what's going to happen. Right. So I was just a straight shooter with him. And you know what? He was appreciative that I was honest with him. I was like, because you know what? There's a lot of schmucks out there who would see this target and let you get into the house, knowing in 9 months later, they're going to get the house right back from you. And that's not cool. So you need to get a better job, get your income up, save your money. Don't go below this money. And, you know, obviously we could work. Well, I'd be more than happy to work with you. But what happens is Paul and his team is going to say, hey, Joe, the front end numbers on this deal aren't going to work. He can't afford the payment. So there's certain percentages and ratios that they know, because Paul and his team aren't just people who screen, they're actually heavy investors too. So part of his business is he gets these people, he also has a credit repair, and he gets these people and does what we do, puts renters into these properties with his credit repair program and then gets them cashed out. So he gives them the same type of a scrutiny. Now also too, if I'm going to be selling a house to say on a wrap, if I'm going to sell it on a wrap, I'm going to do what's called a RMLO. Okay, so what they are going to do is it's a residential mortgage loan originator. There's companies all across the country that you could send them to. So an RMLO is going to be, if I'm going to have a wrap and I'm going to sell this to Bob and Nancy, it's going to cost you about $1,000, $1,200. And what's going to do is this loan originator is going to run it and run all of the numbers. So what's going to happen is you're going to create a note with the seller. And some people sell these notes. And if you're ever going to sell the note buyers are going to want to see that this report has been done. I know I'm taking it a little bit further for some of you guys. If I lost you, I apologize. Getting a little deep on here, but if you're going to sell that note later on, they're going to want to see that this process has been done, so you aren't predatory lending. So I hope that does help you. So basically what I do is I cross our T's and dot our I's and hire people who do this for a living to say, Joe, this looks good to me, or you're effing crazy, don't do this deal. So RMLO, they're all over. You can find one in your state or one that you like. This is recommended to us by Scott Horn out of Dallas, Texas, who's closed probably 10,000 of these transactions. We've spent lots of time on Zoom calls with him, phone calls with him constantly. And this is the best advice that he gives. And this is a guy who's done probably 10,000 of these transactions. So we've definitely adopted to what we do. If I'm just putting in a tenant buyer, I'm not selling them a house. I'm just putting in a renter who plans on buying. Guys, at that point, I'm just going to go to screenthetenant.com. I have my tenant buyer pay the $50 per applicant. A handful of days later, I get my report back. And I'll tell you, if they got 25, 30 grand, and like I said before, unless they're an axe murderer, they're getting in. And even if they were sorry, I'll consider it. Promise never to do it again. I know Jen and I have a difference of opinion there.
We're not gonna go down that another day.
They gotta be sorry and promise not to do it again. That's the difference.
Okay, John, I'll get to your question in 1 second. Alex has asked this a few times. I want to make sure I get to it. Thank you for reminding me. So regarding cash flow, if there's not enough for cash flow, do you assign that contract to whomever it could work? And then if so, where do you find the buyer? Do you tell the seller to agree on the property is managed to a new buyer now? Thanks. So basically, we're not going to keep the deal because it's not cash flowing, but maybe it's going to work great for an Airbnb. What's the quick protocol there?
Or I'm going to assign it to somebody who's going to live in the house,
Yeah.
a homeowner, right? So I'm going to be very transparent with my seller. I've got one of these situations right now. I've got a house here after I pencil the math out. It's either going to barely work for an Airbnb. It could. And it's got a lot of upside potential for where it is in Florida, what's being built around it. So that's great. But the PITI is just too damn high. It doesn't make a rental. The people are down for a deal. They're like, hey, take the house. You give me 15 grand, you could have the house. And the house is built 5 years ago, guys. It's a turnkey house in Florida. The only way that deal is going to work is if I find some northerner who wants to move to Florida and wants to get into a deal at 5% interest, right? Because that's the PITI is going to be just too high for a renter. So if I find a deal, they're saying yes to terms, but the PITI is too high, I'm either going to assign that deal and I tell my seller, hey, listen, this isn't going to work for me in one of my rentals because your PITI is too high after I run the numbers. I do have some buyers who might be interested in this deal. If you want, I can share that with them. And if I find the right buyer, I could have a report done. And if you give them the approval, we have a deal. And if they say yes, then you proceed. You write up the deal, and then you start looking for all of these, put on Zillow, all the moving to Florida Facebook groups, like, hey, who's looking to move to Florida without having to qualify for a mortgage? Financing is already in place. All you need to do is have X amount down, right? Make sure you get your assignment fee and you're off to the races. So some of these deals, especially now, I will tell you, in markets across the country, Phoenix, Las Vegas, a lot of the big cities right now that have this huge influx in the last few years are also going to have a big pullback. Some of these places like the Midwest, like we talked about, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Midwest usually doesn't have huge spikes in the prices. They tend to cash flow pretty well. So I don't think we're going to have a huge drop in pricing there, but a lot of these cities we're going to. So a lot of these cities, if the deal doesn't make sense to cash flow, you're going to need to get out of that and get that to a homeowner. You only want to be in the deals that cash flow, and you're only going to want to be in deals now where they're going to give you a long term to get them cashed out if they do say yes to terms, right? So sometimes they might want a balloon payment in there. I had one yesterday, says you're going to get me cashed out in 2 to 3 years. I said, oh no, if I'm going to pay that price for your house, I'm talking a decade minimum. And if they say no to that, guys, I'm not interested in the deal. I'm not going to put myself in a bad situation. I recommend you do the same. Great question.
Okay, this one is going deep too here. So one thing this person's really concerned about with sub 2 was recently brought to his attention. How do you navigate potential legal issues with sub 2? I'm speaking particularly to Florida statute 697.08 that mentions sub 2 under equity skimming, punishable as a 3rd-degree felony. How do we protect ourselves from this potential risk? And then there was like a screenshot below too. I don't know if you need to see that.
No, I think what you're referring to is in Florida, especially other states too. If a seller stays $20,000 behind on their mortgage, and then you go buy the property subject to, that's where you're going to run to the issue. Okay, the legality of it there, equity skimming. So what you have to do legally, especially in Florida, is if the property is a $20,000 delinquent, you have to get the property current first, then close on it second. Okay, and you have to be, and this is why I say the success is in the details, guys, because you don't want to try to do one thing by watching a YouTube video of us or Pace Morby or Ron the Grand and say, oh, I learned enough and just enough to get, a little wet behind your ears and get dangerous, right? You got to learn these small little things that you can get yourself into a lot of issues. So yes, equity skimming, especially in Florida, it's a real thing. If I'm talking with the seller and they are 15 grand behind in their payments, I get them current. And then after that, and they're current, we close and we do it the right way. So part of what I would really recommend is teaming up with a good attorney or title company who has a history of knowing exactly how to do this. There's a bunch in Florida that we love that we could recommend that do a great job. We've got some that are just cash. We have some that do terms, and they do terms very well. Mark Shapiro is out of Naples, Florida, off the top of my head. He is a lawyer. He's been doing it for 30 years. He owns the title company next door, and he's a heavy investor himself. He and his office are extremely thorough. I could drop him. I really recommend these guys. They're slow. I'm not going to lie. They are slow because they're busy. And when you're good, you're busy. And when you're good and you're busy, you might be a little slow. Would I take that over not knowing what the hell they're doing? Absolutely, every time. I wish they'd be a little faster, but hey, good things don't happen overnight. We also use Advantage Title Company out of Lakeland, Florida for our term deals. Advantage Title Company, Denise there, she's another like 25-year veteran, knows this stuff very, very well. Denise will not let you do hoogie doogie at all. Girl does not play. And she will call you at 8 o'clock at night telling you what her findings are. So she's a very dedicated person. So Mark Shapiro out of Naples, Florida. I think they have an office in Orlando too. And then I also like Advantage Title. Those are my two favorites in Florida that we found so far. And they can go anywhere in the state. So everybody sends mobile notaries down here. So you're not driving to the attorney's office or title company's office. So if your house or your seller's here, they just send a mobile notary to their house and sign them there. Mike wants to know where his shirt's at, babe.
Yes, we'll get into that in the other group, but yeah, so
They're coming.
Anybody who is signed up for our 3-month coaching, you could still enroll. It is, you'll get a free shirt that will kind of,
We got some swag for you, and we got some special shirts for you too. Not just the regular ones. We
yeah,
got
I know
special
you guys are
edition.
getting actual special ones here. So I'm just gonna drop Mark's name really quickly, and I wanted a second Denise. She will stop you right in your tracks, let you know you cannot move any further with the deal if there is something going down that shouldn't be. So
And you know what's crazy about Denise? She's been doing this for close to 30 years, and I can't tell you how many times she's told us out of the 20 something years of doing this, I've never seen a case like this before. I'm like, Denise, you need to stop telling me this stuff, because we come across some wacky situations sometimes. And
Yeah.
she knows she is par for the course, so she's legit.
yeah, these were amazing questions. So definitely take some time to re-listen. And you, I don't know if some of you realize this, but in a lot of these, probably every Zoom, you could sit there and Joe's giving you some like realtor scripts is what I would call the last one, where what he says to a realtor right now on market. I know that was a question that came up. If you go back to the last YouTube station, last video, brain dead, then you can listen to hear what Joe says. You can, seriously take some of these questions and apply them into your own business. That's why we do this. We're giving back, quality information. If anything's ever changing, we're the first to tell you as we're implementing things in our business. So we enjoy doing this. More details on the 3 months coaching. Yeah, absolutely. So we were doing private coaching, which is amazing and a beautiful thing, but there's just 2 of us. And as you saw today, we had almost 45 people in the room today, which is incredible. So a lot of people want more of one-on-one attention from us. And so the best we could do right now is really create this 3-month program where every other week a module opens up where you're getting to watch us come through your video like this. Joe and I are going step by step on all the basics that you need. More information is on our website, but really it's a great way to learn at your own pace. But then also we are coming live to answer questions for this time only. So you'll be able to come here in a very smaller setting, really, open up and ask questions that things that are happening in your business, because everybody's at a different spot. Some people have done 10 deals, some people have done no deals. So it really depends on where you're at. But we've taken everything we've learned over the last, well, Joe's been in it for 22 years. I've been in for the ride for almost 15. Well, I guess now 15 is official. So we're coming back to share all of it with you. So if you want more information, I'd be happy to chat on that. It is.
I'll tell you too. Yeah, I was going to say too, between all the master classes, the mastermind events we've been through with Ron LeGrand, all the training we've been with him for decades now, from having Sharper Solutions come in, talk about processes and all the things, and they are not cheap, guys. Gary Harper and Susan Harper are amazing. Sharper Solutions is fantastic. All the Steve Trang, all the big investors, this guy, they know him all because they've been to all their offices and they work with them. They flew out to our house to sit down with us and train and work with us in our processes. We've sat with Tiffany High, we've Nate Armstrong. We've been coached and mentored by so many other people, learned a lot of the classic ways of what worked, learned a lot of because I'm a techie nerd. So I gravitate to that a lot too. So we're working on a lot of these things that seem to work really, really well too. And after years of people saying, when is the Creative Finance Playbook coming out? Well, guys, it's finally here. So all of the stuff that we've been doing, we've hired our own teams. We've trained tons of students and watched them be wildly successful, sometimes even more successful than us, which I think is awesome when they kick our ass 1 month or 2 months. But that's what's great about it. So we've had a lot of folks who have been engineers and accountant's office and lawyer's office now who are doing this full-time and walk away from their jobs. So it can be done. And the benefit of having this is Jen used to be a teacher. So where I blab way too much and go too far sometimes in deep and off course, Jen keeps it very structured for this Creative Finance Playbook. So we're able to drop to you in modules that if something went over your head, you could go back and listen, right? And we have A to Z. We're giving you our checklists, our scripts that we're using, these sandwich lease purchase agreements. So when you're doing a deal, you're not just walking in there, not trying, we're setting you guys up for success. So we're really excited about it. It's at a heck of a discount right now. It will be up more in the future. This is just the pre-launch price. So it's really exciting. So the fact that we could share with you guys from all of our coaches and then all of the things that we've learned, because now we're going on 3 years of doing this full-time, plus doing this for the last 20 something years part-time, you learn a lot. And you learn a lot of what not to do. And you learn a lot of what to do. even part of having our transaction coordinator, learning that whole process, all these things that we're going to share with you guys. So you're able to do it the right way. And like we looked at earlier, equity skimming and things like this, the success is in the fine details. So if you want to learn all the fine details that you're not going to find on YouTube videos most of the time, that's what this is going to come in. And it's very inexpensive for what it is. And it's almost free for how cheap it is, guys. So what you're getting is a hell of a deal. So if you're serious about making 2023 the year that you want to really crank it up, because the opportunities are only going to start coming in even more than they were in the last handful of years. You don't get many chances like this. 2008, when 2009 and 10, because this is what I told my team, because they're super young. They don't realize, they hear about 2008, but the crash is that's the date, the year, right? But the market slowly went down. 2009, 2010, 2011, that's where the deals were, right? It wasn't in 2008. That's when people were still way overpaying. It was after that. So that's what we're in right now. So everybody's gonna talk about 2022. June was the date, June 2022. Okay, that's when the Fed started hitting the rates. Okay, and then it just kept on happening. So when is the pricing? When's the deals gonna come out? It's gonna be this year, probably next year too. Could probably be in the year after that. So if you want to get some training, this is why we come live for free every Tuesday. We share it all on YouTube, all of our good stuff too. But if you want to take that next step, create a finance playbook, I'm excited. And I know Jen is, because it's finally here. So if you want to find out more, please don't DM me. I'm busy. She is too, but please
I'm not
DM
busy
Jen.
at all. Just message me. No, but
I said you are too, but please DM Jen, because she would be more than happy to answer your questions, because she's way faster at it than I am, and I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and birthday boy here. And that's honestly the beautiful thing, that we are able to homeschool our kids and spend the majority of our time with them. And the goal is definitely to travel more in the upcoming years. And the more we can share our lifestyle and how we're able to do all of this, it was because of creative financing. And maybe that's something where we can kind of go into and share more about some more of our trainings, because it did take a lot of time and money to get the right resources and the people around us. But that's why we also love giving back, because we know that it's priceless, right? You can't get this time back, because somehow my baby is 8 already.
Can't believe it.
I don't know.
Can't
how.
believe it. Cool. Alls I got today. So I see my attorney blowing me up on some stuff we got to talk about. Call a realtor on some stuff. So guys, next week I'm going to be in Tampa for Ron's live event Tuesday. So to next Tuesday at 2:00, I'm going to be tied up. Not gonna lie. They're doing a live quick start here, and I'm gonna be going there and doing some fun stuff. So Tuesday, if you have any questions, maybe what we can do, and I don't want to get all mad at me, but I'm not gonna be here. So maybe next week we could either find somebody to interview or something like that, but I'm gonna try to deliver. I don't know what. Please stay tuned.
We'll work
trying my
on
best.
something. All right.
Cool. Awesome. Other than that, you guys have a great start to New Year. I can't believe it's already 17th of January, guys. February is like right around the corner. So we always talk about what are we going to do 2023? Well, it's already started. Yes, this Zoom is held every Tuesday, typically at 2:00, unless there's something that crazy happens. But yes, it's already starting, guys. So February is around the corner. So if you're hitting your goals, great. If not, turn up your lead machine. People are in a jam and they need to sell, and selling it in the market is no longer working. So what are they going to do? You're going to offer these people terms, and the terms are going to have to work for you too. Cash flowing properties that you get into with low entry fees. That's the name of the game. Okay. With long terms. Don't try to get them cashed out in a year or two, not in this market. So keep tuned. We're going to keep bringing the hotness every week, I promise. And we'll see you guys next week. Got anything else you need to share, babe?
No, now my brain's like cranking, trying to figure out who I want to maybe bring on an interview next week. So
I love it.
Stay tuned.
I love the way your brain thinks. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
All right. Take care, everybody.
See you guys.